all set. All set, Jim?
Yep.
Good evening, everyone. I'll ask everyone to stand for the Pledge of Allegiance and Councilmember December.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, thank you. We'll go around with our roll call. Councilmember Gully.
Here.
Councilmember Garrett. Here. Councilmember Territory is absent. Councilmember Cummings.
Here.
Councilmember absent. Go right into the public forum. If anyone would like to come up and speak on any item on this evening's agenda, there are quite a few items. We'd be happy to have you come up to the podium in 5 minutes, name and address, and we'd ask you to step up to the plate. Okay, going once, going twice, no public forum folks would like to speak, so we're going to go right into an update on the Uncle Sam garage, and I appreciate the mayor. He did get back to me. I had sent the mayor following up on the beam that fell over the weekend, and I appreciate the mayor also over the weekend keeping us all abreast what's going on with Uncle Sam garage, so thank you, Mayor. And I had asked the mayor a couple days ago if he could give us a status of what's happened, what has code enforcement and the fire department over, say, the last 4 years, when it was inspected, if it's been inspected, what were the results of that, and then moving forward. Obviously, we don't own the garage. I'll put that out there. Mr. Bryce does, but what are we doing to work with Mr. Bryce, obviously, because we have to keep him accountable. So saying that, I know that Dave is here on behalf of code enforcement. I do also, about an hour ago, I received a text from someone who states that the Department of Labor, they're looking for contact because they want to move the employees from the Uncle Sam garage to the Fifth Avenue garage while the beam's being fixed and while maybe this is being worked on. So maybe based on what you tell us, I will forward this to this person on who this person should contact to arrange that. Okay? Dave, I don't know if you were the mayor, but we'd like just an update, you know, when was it last inspected? And I did see that a fine was given, but, you know, we're getting bits and pieces, so this will kind of lay it out there.
Okay.
Thank you.
How are you?
Good, Dave. How are you?
Good. Thanks, Dave.
As you know, I'm Dave Sheeran, Principal Code Inspector. The garage has not been inspected in the past 4 years. Russ Reeves, when the addition was put on, was over there, and work didn't go on in 2010. Since then, the state has passed new legislation requiring this to be inspected.
Since
So
what date was that, Dave?
that was in 2018, November. They came out with an outreach program on parking garages. So the date wasn't even close for Mr. Bryce to have it inspected, so we waited for a little while, and then in August we sent Mr. Bryce a notice asking him to have it inspected and provide proof that an engineer has gone through. We didn't get anywhere. He didn't do it. So in November, we sent him a final notice and issued a ticket. And right now he's in court. He did not show up in November for the November court date.
May I stop you? What was the ticket for, Dave?
For not complying with the New York State regulation.
Okay. And was that in code court or?
Yes,
Okay.
it's in court.
Yep. So that was in November.
So that was in November, and he didn't show up. So we're waiting to get back to court with him. Unfortunately, in December, they don't have court. So he's coming back in January. Hopefully he'll appear. Um, Right now, we're working with him to get the situation straightened out.
Okay. Working with him, maybe you could fill us in, so, regarding, what's happening, and obviously timeline, and then moving forward. And obviously, we just want to make sure that we're doing everything humanly possible. I should speak on behalf of myself. I apologize. Everything humanly possible that we're doing to ensure the safety and to make sure, obviously, moving forward. I think there's a sentiment out there of concern. So,
Well, that's our highest priority, the
Yep.
safety of the public. We are working with him. We just got off the phone with an engineering firm that is identifying the problems. Tomorrow morning, I'll go over and take a look at that and walk through. I'm going to bring someone from engineering with me. Todd Dickinson will go with me. But basically, anything privately owned, code enforcement doesn't do the inspections. We will ask that the engineer, that they go out to a third-party engineer and get an inspection, and then we'll go off of their report. So we're waiting on the final draft for that report. We got a draft, but it's not signed or stamped. So right now, we're waiting for that signed and stamped to come in before we release anything.
so they did have it inspected. There is a draft, and we're just waiting for the final sign off from their engineering firm.
That's correct.
Okay. Do you know when that was done?
It was done last week. I received it. The actual date is not on here of the inspection. So there are certain things that we're missing that we would like to get that straightened out before we do move on. There's no stamp, no signature. So right now, we're asking him that his engineering firm produce a stamp and a signature on this, and then we can identify what the problems are and send him the notice according to what he needs to do.
Sure.
Council Member Kennedy. Do you mind using the mic, please? Thank you.
Does the property owner have any other outstanding code violations or other appearances before the code enforcement?
No, not right now.
Thank you. Any further questions or discussion? Moving forward, Dave, so you'll be backtracking with Mr. Bryce. You'll get the final copy of the report. And based on that report, Monica, did you
November
want to add?
27th, we received the report.
Okay, so November 27th. So if they did the report, will the fine go out the window or? Okay,
No, we're not dismissing the ticket. We're definitely going to ask the judge for a fine.
okay. And moving forward is, so basically you're just going to obviously stay on top of the owner. It's Corner Bluff, is the beam area being fixed, and our other issues. I saw some pictures, and I do plan, Mr. Rice and I are supposed to get together on Monday. I want to get a tour of, just the inside, but I saw some pictures. Are they being addressed?
Yes, they are. They're, again, tomorrow everything is color coded. We just got off the phone with the engineer. It's color coded what needs to be addressed immediately and what needs to be addressed in basically the next year. So we're going to go over there tomorrow and check it out. All the areas that are unsafe are to be cordoned off. I have to speak with Monica and Marilyn how we're going to deal with that, whether it's just going to be cones and gates or fence, but we're going to keep the public out of the areas. The engineer has assured us that the areas that are open are safe. So we're going to keep the public out of those areas for the time being until this is shored up.
Okay. And, we'll have to refer the person that's calling about the Department of Labor, just so you know, Monica. So the DOL employees, I guess there's like maybe 40 or 50, I'm not sure. They want to move to the Fifth Ave garage. So obviously you have to be in the loop on that because we own the Fifth Ave. I'm sorry.
We have to make sure we have room.
Exactly. So I'll forward that. I told this person I would get them the contact, so I'll have them call you. Okay. Okay. Did anyone else, are we missing anything? I mean, obviously, we're very fortunate that no one was hurt on Saturday. And moving forward, that's, I just felt obviously we should address it publicly to ensure moving forward that we're doing everything we can to ensure that safety. Okay.
Absolutely. We're
Yeah.
doing everything we can to make sure that he moves as quickly as possible.
All right. Any questions from the council? Okay. Mayor, did we miss anything?
I was out of the room on start.
Okay, so
I'm sure Dave covered everything.
he did. Good. Okay. All right.
Thanks, Dave.
Thank you, David.
Thank you.
Thank you, David. All right. Now we'll go into our presentation of our bond report, and we have Andy up here. Andy's going to give us a inside and out on prior bonds and the report that you sent us, Andy. I do have some questions. Do you have more information?
I have the amended report that you asked for and the breakdown of the bond resolutions on the agenda this evening.
Marty wants to help.
Just one hand.
Here, we'll- Mike, that's the thing.
3 weeks.
Oh, this is good. Thank you. Thanks.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you. So there's two packets that were handed out. A legal size document. There's a second copy of what was sent earlier this week, updated as requested by the council president. The second is a breakdown of all the cost, the approximate estimated cost of all the bond resolutions in the agenda tonight. I'll leave it up to the council if you want to go through it all now, or you want to go through the cost of the bond resolutions as they come up on the agenda. But
If it's okay, I thought maybe some of the older ones, that we have authorized that have been issued, there were some questions that I had, like what it was spent on. Now, just throw it out there, like the Knickerbocker ice rink, I saw that 500, was used on that. So what was the money used toward?
So I was gonna, I'm gonna go through this now.
Okay.
I was throwing out to the council, you want to go through the whole thing now or what? But, so there's two pages. The one on top looks at bond resolutions approved by the city council that are still in existence or as an active project. I think it's important to note, I'm sure most of you have heard this, a bond resolution is good for 10 years. When you approve a bond resolution, it does not mean that the next issuance, I issue the full amount. We issue it then in tranches as we've discussed numerous times. As you can see, it's broken into two categories. The first one is resolution subject to public issuance. Bottom is resolution subject to EFC, Environmental Facilities Corporation issuance. I'm going to touch on that one first because it's much briefer.
Okay.
There's two bond resolutions that are currently passed by the city council that are financed through EFC. 40-inch water main transmission project for $40 million, and the CSO project authorized for $27.7 million. The CSO project, EFC debt is reimbursable. The city pays the bill. We forward all the payment information to EFC and they reimburse the city. That's how the debt's drawn down. It's not subject to public issuance. It's financed through them. That's their methodology of doing it. On the CSO project, to date, we've issued $1.2 million of the $27.7 million. The $40 million bond resolution, we have not even closed with EFC yet. I do not anticipate closing for several months, sometime in 2020. I do not know the date. There's some things we have to work through with that project before closing. So if you look at the whole,
Andy, we had a question, Councilmember Cummings on the, water and CSO. Go ahead.
I don't know if you were finishing.
I was done with that, unless you have questions.
Yeah, so just on the 27 million for the combined sewer, when was that issued? When was that initial project started?
Several years ago. I would ask specific questions for CSO. They're better off with the superintendent of public utilities.
And just one last thing on the CSO, I noticed today the governor and lieutenant governor announced the CFA grants, and Albany and Schenectady received 5 mil apiece for the CSO. Mayor, do you know, did we apply for CSO funding this year?
No, I don't
Yeah,
believe we did
yeah,
the
yeah.
CFA.
Geez, that's too bad, because I saw Albany and Schenectady got the 5 mil CSO, and I was like,
I don't think we were eligible for any applications this year. And they're out of that fund.
What is CSO?
Combined sewer
Combined
overflow.
sewer overflow. Sorry. Yeah, it's at the photo, you can see that, but it's the huge, pool that we're in with Albany, Green Island, Cohoes, and the riverfront communities. Go ahead, Andy.
So if there's no further questions regarding EFC, the resolution subject to public issuance. These are all the resolutions that fall under the bucket of the public offerings that we do currently twice a year. The first one will be February of 2020. The second will be, I think, July 31st, 2020. Those are all publicly let through fiscal advisors. They're bid on. It's what we talk about the most to the council. So there's been, when we were going through the budget, we talked about the volume of bond anticipation notes. I'm not going to disagree that when you look at that number, without having this discussion, it looks very high. And I'm going to show you on the next page that it may be high today, but where we're going, they will be coming down. I think there's two things that are important to note on this page. First is, as you can see, the vast majority of bond resolutions that have been passed by the council have been fully issued. The second is there are a substantial number of projects that have bond resolutions that also have grant funding tied to them that the city needs debt to have cash flow to pay the bills. The city is not financially able, for example, and this is an extreme example, the seawall, the city cannot float these bills to pay before the reimbursements come in on the grant portion of the project.
Chair,
Yep, Councilmember December.
does that mean that those projects are essentially paused until the grant funding comes in?
No, well, if you don't, I'm saying if you didn't have debt, so you didn't have the cash flow for it, the city won't be able to do the project, won't be able to pay the bills. It's for means of cash flow. The only thing the city pays on the grant portion is the interest. It's just an example of why you do it. In regards to your specific questions about the Nick Ice Rink and the Nick Pool, when we look, so for example, tomorrow we are finalizing the numbers for the February issuance. We have been working on the February issuance since before Thanksgiving. It's a 2 to 3 month process. When we last year looked at issuing debt for February of 2019, it was anticipated that the ice rink and the pool work could begin in some fashion. As we discussed at the budget hearing, that had to stop once we realized we had an issue with the lease against the PPU of the bonds. That's why it's been issued. There have been very little, if any, expenses that relate to either one of those projects. This is the amount issued. This is not the amount expended by the city to date. All debt proceeds sit in their own bank account. Every single account accrues interest on a monthly basis.
But the pool, we haven't done anything with it, and there's $500,000.
So there's $500,000 sitting in a bank account earning interest.
Okay.
This
so
does not
now
mean the
it's-
city spent the money. This means that the city has issued the debt.
Yep.
And is paying it back.
So,
Listen, Andy, I don't see, okay, the road construction one, the Campbell and Brunswick, that's not the one we're about to, do tonight.
The bridge tonight is
Right.
to reconstruct the bridge on Campbell
I
Avenue.
can't.
It's not the road work.
This is the act.
This is the road work that's been done. This has been lingering for several
Right,
years.
okay.
There is one example I'd like to show on this page. It's the fourth one down. Spring Avenue Bridge. That, as the city council knows, that project's been complete for many years.
Mhm.
But I do think it's a good illustration of how we issue debt. That bond resolution was authorized for $4.5 million. $4.55 million. And the entire project, we only issued $2.9 million. We are not issuing the rest of the 1.65. You can only use it to reconstruct Spring Ave. That bond resolution and the $1.65 million is going to sit in a drawer until the resolution expires, and then will be shredded and it's gone.
Is that, Council President?
Yep, Councilmember Cummings.
Is that because it was done in phases that we were able to get reimbursement before, or that it came in much cheaper? You know?
That was during the time of my predecessor with those issuances, so I can't speak to how that was issued.
But anyway, we have received reimbursement.
We have received reimbursement.
And the Saptori pool, all the money's been spent, because we're being asked for another $150 tonight, so.
The 150 tonight, to my understanding, is for the second additional work for the project.
Okay, and you'll get into that after, can you
Someone
get into
will,
it now?
yes, someone will speak to it.
Yeah, so that was a question of mine, and so no work has been done with the Knickerbocker, it's just a $500,000
No, this
city.
has nothing to do with expenses related to projects. This is merely what bond anticipation notes have been issued by the city to date on the resolutions. This is not reflective of the current amount outstanding. That's on the next page.
Go to the next
And
page.
maybe on the ones that members have questions in terms of the specific work. So no work has been done on the Knickerbocker pool, so forget about that. And then South Troy, we'll get an update why we need another 150. And then the ice rink, that's another one. It's in the bank account, no work.
Right.
Okay. Demolition, Leonard Hospital, I take it that's in a bank also, because they
Well,
have it,
There's work being done, the abatement's
The
being done now. So
abatement, but
the money
only,
has been spent, but the remaining balance, again, is sitting in its own bank account, earning interest every month.
but see, what I was hoping, like this shows, and this is good, don't get me wrong, but I'd like to know, like, out of that 2.5 mil, how much has been spent to date? You know what I'm saying?
I thought you guys wanted the
This is a
same
start.
sheet you wanted last year. This is the sheet that was provided.
Yeah, what I'd like to know, the ones, that we are in the middle of, and, obviously, if that's a lot of work, I don't mind waiting for it, but I'd like to know, okay, so, for instance, Leonard Hospital, how much of that has been used to date, and, overall, on what? I would think it's kind of a cut and paste or something. But Powers Park, that's another one, like, I'd like to know how much out of that has
I didn't know
been
that's what I didn't know that. I thought we were doing a similar presentation to what's been done in the past.
used. No. I mean, I thought you and I talked about that, but that's
No.
okay, it's okay.
We had
The second page has.
The
some-
second page is, I
Yeah.
think, is much more information.
Right.
It is,
has some of that.
Here. Mhm.
this shows the city council kind of and I will note, this is estimated. This is 2020, pretty accurate, I would say. This is the plan. 2021, this is what I'm hopeful to be able to do. This looks at the bans as they are currently outstanding. There is to date $43.75 million outstanding in bond anticipation notes between the general fund, water fund, and garbage fund. The next column looks at 2020 paydowns. That's the amount that we are reducing the bans by in 2020. Either through the general fund, garbage fund, water fund, or through grant reimbursements. Of the $43.75 million, we will be paying down $11.5 million, or 26.35%. I'm also looking at converting to serial bonds, long-term debt, another $10.2 million in 2020. That is 23.5%. It is highly recommended right now to convert as much as we can to long-term debt. What I did as part of the budget presentation, if it was under $50,000, it's being paid off in 2020. If it's eligible to go to long-term debt with a PPU over 5 years, it's going to long-term debt.
Chair?
Yes,
And-
Councilmember.
And is that because right now the interests are good rates, so we want to make sure we're.
So I worked all the methodology was done in concert with our financial advisor for debt, fiscal advisors. We're in consistent communication throughout the year that's been recommended. We did it, as everyone knows, we did it in August. We will be doing it again in February, and we will be doing it again in August of 2020. When we issue long-term debt, we fix the payments, and then they're in the budget for the life of the debt, whatever the term is.
Councilmember Gully.
So Andy, if I hear you right, you're saying that our financial advisor had said this is an optimal time to take our projects and bulk them and that's due to the low interest rate. And we know that with the economy, you never know when that rate could go up, but do they see that happening every 6 months? Does that move that much when it comes to a rate on bond notes?
It keeps getting better. In August we got a very good rate. The rates are even better from what I've been told. Rates are very, very good right now. Better than they even were in August.
Do we anticipate if they would get much better or if they would move in a different direction?
It's hard to tell off the economy. It's kind of like get it in while it's good. You know what I mean? Where it's headed, we thought in August that was as good as we were going to get. And early markers show that we're going to get as good, if not better.
So-
It does depend on the size. It does depend on the size of the issues. I mean, there's the economy, there's your bond rating, but at the end of the day too, if you have a bigger issuance, the bigger firms will bid on it. A couple years ago when we had smaller bid issuances, this is no knock on any local financial institution, but it was more Pioneer Bank, Saratoga National Bank, Glens Falls who were bidding on our bonds, our bands. Now, as the dollar amounts increase, one of our issuances is over $30 million. We had bids last year from Oppenheimer, Jefferies, TD, Wells Fargo. Obviously, when you get into those markets, it's more advantageous.
Are they companies that can offer us the best rate for bulk bonding?
It's publicly bid. It's just not bid through our office. It's everything's done through a financial advisor who puts it out to all the big markets. It will be advertised for several weeks before the bids are open. Everything's, we use DTC for a lot of our bond issuance activities. So it's as public as it will get.
And once we bond it out at a low interest rate, it stays at that no matter when. If we only spend part of the money, still at that rate, we spend all the money.
So if we can't, we won't.
Years down the road,
we won't-
still get that same rate.
So we won't serial bond until the project's done. So that way, if you have $1,000 for just small numbers, if you have $1,000 ban outstanding and you only spent $900, you still have $100 in the bank account. We'll pay down the $100 on the ban and issue the serial bond on the $900. So that way you're paying it down and not paying interest on the full $1,000.
Thank you.
Whereas as soon as you go to serial bonds, you're locked in.
Serial bond, you're fixed and you can't control what you pay back. A ban, you have, so year one, you don't have to make a principal payment, but you can if you want to. Year 2, 3, 4, and 5, there is a mandatory minimum payment calculated off a serial bond of 15 years at a 4.95% interest rate. If you want to pay down more on the principal other than that, then you can. I mean, for example, on the sheet, if you look at the 2019 general fund capital plan, in the second column, the 2020 pay down is $283,000. The city does not have to pay that. That was paid because it's smaller items, $16,000, $50,000. It adds up to $283,000. There's no sense in continuing to pay interest on those items. The items have been purchased. If you're able to, pay it off and move on.
Yeah, and what I'd like to know, and maybe we could get like a follow-up report, the monies that have been expended, what has been done, and Monica could probably, work with someone on that, just so we have a general idea. We're authorizing the bonding's been issued, and I'd like just to find out, what's been done, what's on docket, timeline, that type of thing, just so we know, we're authorizing these millions of dollars and, like Powers Park, I'd like to know, where maybe half of it's in the bank, maybe half of it's been used, that's what I'd like to know.
So at the end of 2020, what I'm projecting right now is just under $22 million in bond anticipation notes of what has currently been issued. This is not reflective of any new issuances that will occur in 2020. So this is just looking at what's out there right now. Again, we still don't have the other numbers finalized. What the second to last column on the right-hand side, projected 2021 pay down or conversion. That's a best guess as we're sitting here today. It's looking at converting or paying down another $13.7 million and taking that $43.75 million outstanding advance today and December 31st, 2021, $8.1 million will be left. Granted, there will be new bands,
Right.
but that's the amount that will be left of the 43.7 that's sitting there currently today.
Do you have any,
Councilman.
do you have any breakdown between pay down and conversion there?
Realistically, as we currently stand today, just a guess looking at it, the 71 will be pay down. Leonard will be a mix of pay down and serial bond. The Marina will be I believe, mostly pay down. Powers Park will be a mix. Riverfront North will be a mix. Road construction will be primarily pay down. Seawall will be a mix. South Troy pool reconstruction will be a serial bond. So it's a mix. It's 60-40, 50-50 maybe.
So after, in 2020, we're adding about 10 million to the serial bond load. And then in 2021, we're adding about 7.
Potentially,
Somewhere
yes.
in there.
It's still way too early to know.
Okay.
That's a number, for example, we're still finalizing pay downs
Right.
this week for February. And so you have to keep checking the bank account and see how much money's there, especially for grant projects, and what's needed for the rest of the project versus what's sitting in there, and then any excess goes to the pay down.
Great.
It's all timing and whatnot. And a lot of it too is, right, we have vehicle bans out there. If bids come back lower than what we anticipate for, if there's remaining proceeds, we use that to pay it down. And also keep in mind, as the council passed earlier this year, all the interest and everything all the interest that is earned on this debt is used to pay the debt.
Right.
And we will continue to do those sweeps. All bank accounts earn 4 basis points, except for one earns 1% annually, which is very good for municipal banking.
So Andy, what would be the reason to issue, like, say, half of the NIC So, that was done prior to us knowing about the lease.
It was done prior to knowing about the lease issue
Okay.
versus the PPU event.
Okay, all right. Okay. But there's no financial reasoning why you would issue it and then put it in the bank.
If we had known about the lease issue, it would not have been issued.
Okay, very good. Councilmember, no?
Could the 550 have anything to do with establishing the funding on the city end for that grant that we were looking for the 1.1 million on the?
It was, we thought work would be able to start. It was to seed the work, and
So in
it was the lease issue. It was just merely the lease issue, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, it is a lease issue. It was.
It's the lease issue. It's the lease, for those who don't, it's the fact that the lease term is shorter than the PPU. So the lease has to get out beyond the PPU of that bond resolution to really make it work.
And so the NIC pool, same thing.
Same issue.
The money probably for planning, we took it out maybe to plan, then we found out about the lease. Maybe,
I'm
Yes.
not sure, because that's actually the replacement of the existing pool.
okay.
That was, yeah. Because the engineering for the Knickerbocker Association was associated in a different capital account. That was the $80,000 that you had put aside.
And we're closed out on the court facilities, right?
Correct, it's being paid down and going to serial bond in 2020.
While we're on that, do you want to hit the storage unit that we're being asked to bond, or do you want to hit it when we get to that item? How do you want to do?
The storage building,
Yeah.
the ordinance for the 180,000, that's
yes.
not a bond, that's $120,000 was a bond, on a bond resolution in 2018 capital plan, 2019 capital plan. The bids came in high, the money, the $180,000 is coming from the general fund, it's not a bond resolution.
Okay. I wrote that in my notes. Okay. Do you want to talk about South Tripole now? I mean, while we're
That's up to the city
talking, do you
council.
want to, Monica? Is it all right with you guys? I mean,
Well, just before we move from
Yeah,
the
okay,
review.
yep.
I guess one thing I've been trying to figure how to wrap my head around is where the trend line is in terms of what the actual annual payments on serial bonds that we're committing to now and into the coming years.
It's all in the other packet, I just don't know if the council wants to go, when to go through it individually, when the
So
resolutions come before it
this packet is for
tonight.
the ones tonight, which I definitely want to go through.
yeah,
But I guess I don't
Chair.
have a clear sense of where our baseline is, what we're already committed to there.
well,
If these
Andy's looking
projections
for
work.
that.
I just,
Councilmember Cummings has the floor, but did you have a question?
just a question,
Yeah.
if you don't mind, instead of creating confusion by talking about it and then going to the actual bond, I would like to just go through them and then talk about them as we come to them, and then this way we have clarity on the subject that we're on, and
Okay.
we're not jumping all over.
No,
That's-
agree, I'm not
yeah.
talking about the ones
Yeah.
tonight, I'm talking about the ones that
He's
were passed.
talking about the
I'm
prior.
talking about the ones tonight when we do those.
No,
Okay,
the
fair enough.
ones
I agree.
tonight will hit as we go along, that's fine. But the prior
Now,
ones.
one other question,
Yeah.
me and Andy, couldn't it be like a rate like so much per 100,000 or something? You said, hey, you know, the payment on those is based on this percentage on 100,000, be this much. We could kind of generalize that payment, because I don't think you can get specific with any of them, can you?
So the analysis that the council has tonight assumes a escalating band interest rate, I believe it started at 2.5%, increasing 0.1% on an annual basis, with a serial bond interest rate of 2.95% for the life of the serial bond. That was all done and working with fiscal advisors. I don't know if that answers your question.
Well, it was really fast, but I tried to write most of it down.
So it's-
average
it's-
about 3% at the end.
Right.
It's about 3%.
3%.
So 3% on 100,000. It'd be $1,000.
3,000.
$3,000.
I don't want that.
3,000. You're a numbers guy. 3,000. So $3,000 on 100,000.
Chair,
Yes, Councilman.
so when we're looking at the interest that's outstanding, does the interest cover what we need to pay as we're paying it down? You mentioned there was between 1% and 4% interest on the different funds. Does that cover the cost of making sure we're not, what's the word? You know, it'll get capitalized and the principal increases. Are we covering that as we're paying out this debt?
Are you talking about the interest earned by the city?
Yes.
So the interest earned on the city offsets the interest cost. It does not equal it. It does not greater than it.
Okay.
So it just merely offsets it.
Okay.
So there's no concern. That's called arbitrage. There's no arbitrage issue. And people say issues because there's a lot that goes in when you have arbitrage. You're not really supposed to earn more interest than what your debt percent is, which is why you see, that's why I said 1% is really good. Municipal rates are very low, if anything, on money held at banks. We've been very fortunate that our bank is very good to us.
Thank you.
Councilmember Cummings, to answer your question, on an annual basis, as it currently stands, and this is all already in the budget, we pay approximately $564,000 annually in serial bonds.
Okay, and that's on, what's the total issued serial bonds right now?
I don't have that number in front of me. Let me see if I can find it.
About 560, you said?
564 a year. Total serial bonds issued to date is 6.7 million.
6.7.
One was issued in 18, one was issued in 19.
Now, obviously, the length of a lot of these are different.
Right.
But, you know, when we issue another 10 million this year, what's the 2021?
I have not run that
Yeah.
today.
Right.
I haven't been able to get to that. I would rather see what the closing looks like.
Sure.
So we'll have that 4 weeks, 5 weeks, the next batch of serial bonds. Again, it's all in this document tonight. I just, quite honestly, ran out of time to
I mean, so-
aggregate what's currently there and what's out into the future. I mean, there's a summary page on the front.
So this, the 6.7 includes, are there any 40-year bonds in there?
There's one serial bond that's paid off. That's 10 years. The second one is 15 years.
Okay, so.
So if you
it's not
had-
that- the math is not that comparable, and I can't just multiply because these are 40-year bonds that are gonna be
Right.
smaller annual payments.
Yeah.
Okay. But we're certainly looking at hundreds of thousands per year added each of these years.
Correct. And it's, again, the analysis tonight is a very simple one. It's assuming it's all issued, in the exception of one, that the full bond resolution amount is issued in 2020. And that, you know, the fire pumper, for example, won't be issued in 2020.
Right.
It'll be issued next year.
Right.
2020. When I say next year, at this point, it's 2021.
Right, well, gives me a slightly better understanding. Thank
A
you.
little better.
I mean,
It's
so-
a
this is
start.
great.
It's, Andy, wonderful work. It's a start, and then you'll be able to add on to it, kind of a work in progress to what we're looking for, right? Did anyone else want to hit any, just obviously the prior ones, and then we'll go accordingly once we get to the agenda.
Chair,
Yes, Councilman.
I just want to, because for in summation for myself to better understand this. So what you have here for this summary bond anticipation notes, 43.75 million outstanding now, with projected by 2021, paying that down, we'll have 8.17 remaining
Of this group.
of this.
Of
That
this
doesn't
group, not
include
any new
anything
stuff,
future.
just of this group.
So before we even do any more bonding, we're going to be carrying that. Okay.
So we're paying that plus
Plus,
10 in
Plus.
serial bonds
Yeah.
and maybe another 7 in serial bonds.
Yeah.
No, you're converting. It's not like it's 43 plus. It's
Right.
go moving
No,
from the
right,
band
right,
bucket
right.
to the serial bond
Eight-
bucket.
eight in bands plus about guessing 17 in serial bonds.
I'm not gonna
Right,
guess.
that's-
I don't feel comfortable sitting here today guessing.
Well, we
what-
got 10 on the
what-
board certainly, and then
There's
some
10 on the
portion
board,
of it.
certainly. I'm not gonna sit here today and project what I'm doing in 2021.
That makes sense. Okay.
and the first page of the 43 mil includes all of these, correct? Okay. I didn't have time to compare them, obviously. Okay. Did someone have a question? We good?
We're good.
All right, let's move
Thank you,
forward.
Andy. Thank you, Andy. Move on.
All right. All right, we'll go into the finance agenda, and Andy, you might as well hang there if you don't mind. Okay,
I'm not going anywhere.
Yep,
I wrote
thank
it.
you. All right, so let's go to Ordinance 117, ready? Ordinance authorizing the re-levy of unpaid amounts relating to water bills onto the 2020 property tax bills. Councilmember December, at the request of the administration. Do I have a motion?
Motion.
Motion, Councilmember Cummings. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second, Councilmember Gully. Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? Abstain. Yeah. Ordinance 118, ordinance authorizing the re-levy of unpaid amounts relating to garbage fees onto the 2020 property tax bills. Do I have a Councilmember December at the request of the administration? Do I have a motion? Motion, Councilmember Garrett. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second, Councilmember Cummings. Discussion. My only one on this, Sandy, if we're re-levying, I believe, my notes, yeah, I think the re-levy was $500,000. If we're re-levying similar to last year, are we going to be looking at the same position that we're in this year to next year?
No, that
Do
was,
you know what I'm
that was a
saying?
one-time only accounting function that occurred in moving the garbage operations out of the general fund to the garbage fund in the 2019 fiscal year.
Okay, so just because it's going on the taxes, not into the garbage fund, it won't have an impact on our garbage fund to make up that difference.
General fund already made it.
Correct.
The second this is re-levied on the tax bills, the general fund owes the garbage fund, along with any water re-levies, sewer re-levies, or garbage fund re-levies are paid in full by the general fund. So the general fund is on the hook if the people don't pay the re-levies, which is that they don't pay the property taxes. So the general fund makes this whole January 1st.
Okay. All right. Further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? 118 carries 6-0. 119, ordinance authorizing the re-levy of unpaid amounts relating to vacant building fees onto the 2020 property tax bills. Councilmember December at the request of the administration. Do I have a motion? Motion, Councilmember Garrett. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second, Councilmember Gully. Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? 119 carries 6-0. Ordinance 120, ordinance authorizing the re-levy of unpaid amounts relating to water and sewer shop work bills onto the 2020 property tax bills. Councilmember December at the request of the administration. Do I have a motion?
Motion.
Motion, Councilmember Gully. Do I have a second? Second. Second, Councilmember Garrett. Discussion? All in favor? Opposed? 120 carries 6-0. Ordinance 121, ordinance authorizing the re-levy of unpaid amounts relating to garbage bulk fees and garbage violations onto the 2020 property tax bills. Councilmember December at the request of the administration. Do I have a motion? Motion, Councilmember Garrett. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second, Councilmember Gully. On this one, my question, Andy, is we're re-levying more than what we are projecting in next year's budget. How can we do that? I think the re-levy, I don't have my little cheat sheet, was $120, and next year's projection is 100. So we're actually re-levying through this ordinance more than the bulk fees projected to take in next year. How's that?
It's 112,000.
112, thank you. I knew it was right around
So the bulk revenue estimate for 2020 is $200,000, and the garbage violation estimate is $70,000. This is the total re-levy of both of those combined.
Okay, so they're combined. All right, and the garbage violations would be anything where people are putting it out early?
Anything that was not called in.
Okay, all right. And we're looking to re-levy 112. Okay, All right. Further discussion?
Chair.
Councilmember Gully.
Andy, through my experience and the residents that I serve, I've had a lot of phone calls on bulk fees that people are receiving that they feel are not proper. And I know that, we have a very good system of taking pictures and adequately running down all the information on that pickup. But what happens if we re-levy this onto somebody's taxes and we find out that there's a problem there, that they, maybe it wasn't their bulk, maybe it was somebody else's, or somebody did something to feed, will they adjust that?
We've adjusted it. We've also, so part of the re-levy process is there's a review of we reviewed them all the numbers, right? And there were numerous bulk pickup fees or violations that are still in the review process for adjustments. We pulled them out of re-levy. So that
You
we
did.
we did pull them out.
Right.
It's not fair to the taxpayer to have it on the re-levy, and to be quite honest, it's a lot easier to flag items for no re-levy under that situation than it is to adjust it off the tax bill, because if you're disputing it and it goes past the due date, it's a lot easier, but it's not on the tax bill.
Good thing.
So they're not on this list?
They're not on this list.
Okay, how many do you know
Off the
approximately?
top of my head, I don't know.
Okay, could you just throw us an estimate down the road? Be curious how many. Okay, so these are legit folks.
And as far as we know, they are legitimate ones. It's not to say someone's not gonna see it on their tax bill and come in and fight it, but to date, everyone that's currently ongoing with an adjustment, to my office's understanding, is not on re-levy.
All right, further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, we have 5, 0, and 1. Ordinance 122, ordinance adopting the general fund balance policy. Council President Mantello at the request of the administration. Do I have a motion?
Motion.
Motion, Councilmember Gully. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second, Councilmember December. On this one, Andy, ordinance 122. The dollars I use for the fund balance. Oh, this one, the dollars that aren't used, we're putting into the fund balance, correct?
So this is a fund balance policy that used to be on a resolution that the council amended last year. I would rather have it as a formalized document rather than as a resolution. So this is merely taking that resolution, passing it as an ordinance in a more formal policy. There is one change in it. The snow and ice, so all these are all statutorily governed by New York State municipal law. Snow and ice reserves have a rule in them that if you appropriate from that reserve in a given year, within 2 years you have to pay it back. We sit here tonight with an ordinance 125 using the money from the snow and ice reserve. I will note that this was all consulted after I came up with this, consulted with the state comptroller's office, and they're perfectly fine with the way this is written. If there is a surplus, for example, in 2019, it should not go to the unassigned fund balance, and it should not go to other reserves if the city owes money back to the snow and ice reserve. Because you're gonna put the money, if it's not in there, you're gonna put it in the unassigned fund balance, and if the city has to pay it back in next year, 2020 or 2021, it's gonna be in the budget. But you already have the surplus available to put it back. So this merely prevents having the budget for it if the surplus is there in a given year.
So you're taking the monies not used, putting it into fund balance.
So this is the same thing that's been there for years. This is just cleaning up the rules to reflect the rules of this is cleaning up the policy to reflect the rules of the snow and ice reserve. That was not in there previously.
And you can't move that to another account without the council's.
Correct. That's why the next 3 ordinances are on.
Right, okay.
Those are, you have how many years?
Council member,
2 years.
2
But
years.
if you have the surplus in year 0, you might as well put it back.
Yeah, I started that when I just wasn't sure where you were going with it, but it makes sense. Okay,
Chair,
yes, council member.
are the allocation percentages based on state law, or are those determined by our own code?
Those were set up in 1997.
So what's the rationale for requiring so much in the capital? I mean, I've got some guesses, but it's 80% for capital reserves?
in my opinion, you need more money in the capital reserve. Those tend to be bigger expenses, right? You look at the next two ordinances, the dollar amount, it's major ticket items that are emergencies.
Right.
Thanks.
Okay. Further discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Ordinance 122 carries 6-0. Ordinance 123. Ordinance amending the 2019 general fund budget to appropriate funds from the capital reserve. Council President Mantello at the request of the administration. Do I have a motion?
Motion.
Motion, Councilmember December. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second, Councilmember Cummings, and this is Sage Ave.
Correct, so we're gonna use, what's the proposed, method of funding prepares the paving for Sage Avenue, right? So it was split between the sewer fund on the sewer work, paving from the general fund. This is proposing using the capital reserve, which this is what the capital reserve is there for emergencies.
Mhm.
To use this funding out of the reserve of $290,800 to pay for the paving.
Okay. And my only question on this one, have we put in any documentation to try to get reimbursed? I know they declared that emergency that day, didn't they?
We declared it an emergency, but it didn't meet the financial
didn't.
threshold.
Okay. Bummer. Okay.
Too affordable.
Further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Ordinance 123 carries 6-0. Ordinance 124, ordinance amending the 2019 general fund and capital projects fund budgets to appropriate funds from the capital reserve for the purpose of Mount Ida. DM, Council President Mantello at the request of the administration. Do I have a motion? Motion, Councilmember Garrett. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second, Councilmember Gully. Discussion? There is no dollars left on Mount Ida, correct?
And that was seated, that don't recall the dollar amount from the council earlier this year, but it needs additional funding.
And that was, I'm looking back, that's 1.1,
The bond,
yeah.
you can't use the bond proceeds for the work that's being done up there. The bond is
So none
only,
of that's
the
selling.
bond is only for the abutments. So any work beyond the abutments is not, you cannot use the bond.
But have we issued that 1.1? We have,
Years ago,
and it's just sitting there now?
just sitting there.
Some of it was used, right?
Some of it was used, the dollar amount,
Okay.
I don't know.
But you'll get that us down the road. That's what I'd like to know, like how much is left of that. All right. Okay. And did any of this money, bonded money, out of this or no?
Well, this is using the
totally
this is from the
capital
capital
fund.
reserve and the
Okay.
general fund for the Mount Ida Dam.
All right. Further discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Did you have a question? You sure? Okay.
I think I do now. Oh, yes, I do.
We do have a question. It did pass, but Councilmember Cummings has a question.
I just wanted to get clear. So both of these revise the appropriated fund balance line. So
Oh,
it'll end up being the addition of the two.
I don't presume that things are gonna pass.
Gotcha. So the revised budget ends up being 7.
Correct. Well, you gotta add in 125, so.
I presume.
All right.
Gotcha.
It did pass 6-0. Ordinance 125, ordinance amending the 2019 general fund budget to appropriate funds from the snow and ice removal reserve, what we kind of talked about earlier. Council President Mantello at the request of the administration. Do I have a motion?
Motion.
Motion, Councilmember Gully. Do I have a second? Second, Councilmember Garrett. Discussion? I did see this one. I do apologize. 125. I thought I wrote notes. No, there's 126. Okay. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? All right, 6-0. 126, ordinance amending the special revenue budget to accept a New York State Homeland Security grant for the purpose of purchasing cybersecurity and interoperable communications equipment. Council President Mantello at the request of the administration. Do I have a motion? Motion, Councilmember Garrett. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second, Councilmember Gully. Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? 126 carries. And I apologize, I misnumbered. I did have a question on 125. We're adding, monies to, that particular fund. Is there a reason or we just need it? I
What we're
thought-
using the snow and ice reserve for?
Yeah,
We're using it to pay the third-party companies that come
private
in and
contractors,
truck the snow out.
okay. And really, it's that high.
Right, don't you?
Yeah, really. Okay, thank you. I apologize, 126 carried, 6-0, 127. Ordinance declaring certain city-owned property as surplus and directing the comptroller to dispose of said property. Council President Mantillo, at the request of the administration, do I have a motion?
Motion.
Motion, Councilmember Gully, do I have a second?
Second.
Second, Councilmember Cummings, discussion. This is for an adding machine, a typewriter, 2 adding machines, a typewriter, and a parking ticket issuance handheld machine.
Finally modernizing the comptroller's office off the typewriters.
Probably hold
We
on.
still use
I
them.
like that
We still use them.
typewriter. Further discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? 127 carries 6-0. 128, ordinance transferring funds within the special grants fund budget.
I thought that was
Oh,
pulled.
yes, that was pulled, I apologize. 128 pulled, 129, ordinance amending the capital projects fund and general fund budgets. Council President Mantello, at the request of the administration, do I have a motion? Motion, Councilmember Garrett, do I have a second?
Second.
Second, Councilmember Cummings, discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? 129 carries 6-0. Ordinance 130, ordinance amending the capital projects fund and general fund budgets. Council President Mantello, at the request of the administration, do I have a motion?
Motion.
Motion, Councilmember December, do I have a second?
Second.
Second, Councilmember Gully, discussion. This is the one on the police building. Can you fill us in?
It's been bid once, came in higher than 120,000, came in over $200,000. They removed 30 linear feet from the bid. They rebid it, came back in too high a second time after discussions with the police chief. It's bid it twice and it doesn't seem to be, it didn't move.
$8,000?
$8,000 the bids moved after removing 30 linear feet. It needed additional funding. It was able to be found within the police department budget and the contingency. It's to make it so that there's enough funding for, based off the 2 bids that were received in the fit up of the building as required by the police department.
Sure.
It's a lot of money, yeah.
Are we going back to the original plan and adding the 30 feet for 8,000?
This is for where they used to store.
This is the impounding.
Huh? I wasn't gonna come up. So this is, I have to rebid it if we added it back in because it's a material change to the, listen, it depends. The bidding system fluctuates greatly depending on who's available, timeframes, project timelines, those types of things. This is a storage facility in between where the back building is that's gonna come down and it's gonna be, able to store some of the, vehicles and stuff that come in, that need to be.
Between the police department and the
Correct.
Right.
Yep, so there'll be a fence, we're working with Rose and Bloom on the fencing and all that other kind of stuff, and then it'll be actually a really nice facility. The
So the
department is-
enclosed annex.
Can we
area?
go through the chair, please?
It's a pole barn essentially, it's a big pole barn and they'll have some heat in there, I think it's heated. And then they'll be able to store all of the vehicles and stuff that used to be sitting in the garage, in that
Oh, it's a
grassy
mess.
area. Yeah, so that'll be all cleaned up, it'll be all put back, that way they can actually get into the other garage as well, so when they bring in prisoners and stuff like that, they can actually utilize that day, for original purpose.
You know, Monica's Rosenblum, are they partnering on anything, or is this all on our dime?
They actually installed the side fence already, and then we're working with them to kind of make sure that the heat and everything matches and all that kind of stuff. They have indicated that they would, you know, work with us. I don't know if that is financially, I don't know, we'll see. They're not required to, but we'll see what happens. They've been very good neighbors.
But it's all been planned aesthetically and.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So we had the engineering firm come in and take a look at it. And then Todd Dickinson's been working with the police department, with the chiefs to make sure that everything that they need and require is gonna be put in there. And then obviously all the security.
Chair,
Yes, Councilman.
this is taking 65,000 out of contingency, leaving with 45,000. Is that the police department's contingency, or is that our
General.
the general fund? So we have 45 grand left in contingency.
Thank goodness it's the day it is.
Thanks.
Council President,
Yep, Councilmember Cummings.
does the planning board look at this project at all, or is it not
Um,
necessary?
Yeah, we could certainly take it through to them once they get the final drawing. So, yeah.
Okay. Further discussion? All in favor? Opposed? All right, ordinance 130 passes 6-0. Five, I apologize. And see him sneak out. All right. Ordinance 131. Ordinance transferring funds within the 2019 water fund budget. Council President Mantello at the request of the administration. Do I have a motion? Motion, Councilmember Garrett. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second, Councilmember December. Discussion? All in favor? Opposed? All right, 131 carries 6-0. 132, ordinance transferring funds within the 2019 sewer fund budget. Council President Mantello at the request of the administration. Do I have a motion?
Motion.
Motion, Councilmember Gully. Do I have a second? Second, Councilmember Garrett. Discussion? All in favor? Opposed? 132 carries 6-0. Ordinance 133, ordinance transferring funds within the 2019 general fund budget. Council President Mantello at the request of the administration. Do I have a motion?
Motion.
Motion, Councilmember Kennedy. Do I have a second? Second, Councilmember Garrett. Discussion. I saw the purchase of a new vehicle for parking enforcement. See the outside legal fees, 133. So the total for legal fees, we're going, it looks like from 350 originally this year, we're gonna end up about 615. Is that around right?
So the amendment is taking it from 320,000 to 560,000.
Okay, but didn't we do 133? I could have sworn we transferred 133.
This was the budget as of the date that we wrote that I wrote the schedule at.
Just want to go on record. I really feel that the court counsel, that the legal outside fees continue to rise. And, you know, I know you have a lot of work there, Mr. Caruso, but, I mean, are you seeing more of a workload? Because they are going up over the years.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Due to factors that are totally beyond the control of the Department of Law, we have been compelled to expend an inordinate sum of money on outside counsel's fees. As you know, we're involved in some major litigation, both in federal court and in state court, that required significant amounts of time in both the answering of complaints, but the conducting of discovery and preparation for trial. These are truly beyond our control. In a perfect world, my office would handle everything. We don't live in a perfect world. As you know, my staff and I got no increase And as far as I'm aware, my staff hasn't had an increase in at least 14, maybe 15 years. We simply don't have the time. There's one full-timer, me, and there's 3 part-timers, and they're all swamped. I know Councilmember Cummings and Councilmember December have approached me on this issue. In future years, I'm hoping there is money to hire more staff. But even if there was more staff, what we have is we have a tremendous amount of very specific subject areas that have to be defended. And let's face it, our unions are bombing us with more and more and more and more grievances. I will just direct your attention, I should say, to Goldberg Segala. That is our labor council, $209,000, or more than that. That's to date. That's to date. And we don't have money. I mean, we've got 3 outstanding bills that we don't have money to pay. So, cruel hard fact of life is we need this transfer. You know me enough to know that I'm not exaggerating when I say we just can't handle this and we have to go to outside counsel. These people, these attorneys, even though their rates are really very reasonable, I mean, particularly Patterson Sampson, their rates are incredibly reasonable. And Goldberg Segala has given us a very good rate because they want our business, but they're generating tremendous legal fees. And it's just one of those things. It's akin to going in the garage with your car and you think it's just, you need this or that. It turns out you need a timing chain, you need this, you need a new transmission. And what you thought was going to cost $400 is now costing $4,000. We can't predict when these things start, how much they're going to cost.
Yeah, and I'm not recommending more funding in-house. I just, I want to make sure that obviously the outside consulting is monitored carefully.
I can tell you, and I look at each and every bill that is submitted to me. If I have a question, I will contact the attorneys and I'll say, what's this? Are you double billing us for this? What's this? Is this necessary? Andy knows for a fact, when I called Goldberg Segala about their bill, I will say to them, my first comment is, by the way, you can't bill me for this because this is about your bill. Attorneys can't bill you when you're questioning their bill. And I will start off that. I think perhaps Jonathan Bernstein might be offended by that, but I'll say, you can't bill me for this. I need to explain this to me about your bill. I do look at the bills. I do take a hard look at them before I give them to Cindy to produce the invoice, and then of course it goes through the process. But these bills are being looked at, they are being scrutinized.
And my only question, I know that you're proposing this evening, Jim, to hire Merenstein, which is a bankruptcy attorney.
Yes.
Do we have something specific that we're looking to have them work on? Because this is kind of new.
Yes, we do.
While you're here.
What happened was we used to try to do that in-house. Bankruptcy law, again, a very specialized area of the law, and you have to have access to the computerized online system. And if you don't have that, you can't submit stuff. In fact, we submitted some stuff sent it by mail, and the clerk acted like we had 2 heads. You can't do that. It's got to go online. Everything's online. Everything's electronic. So what we're having what we happen frequently is we take people's property in tax foreclosure, okay? And let's say we take the property for $27,000 in unpaid taxes, right? They go down to the bankruptcy court, even after they've lost the property. And the city of Troy now owns it. They go down to the bankruptcy court and they say to the trustee in bankruptcy, the city of Troy took my property for less than fair value. And the bankruptcy law is specifically geared to and written to protect the debtor. And then the trustee in bankruptcy brings what's called an adversary proceeding against us and says, you got to give them back their property because you took a house that was worth $130,000 for $27,000. That's not fair value, and that's not fair to the debtor or to any of the other creditors. And that's why you've seen a couple of deals we've come to before the city council with, where we're actually agreeing to transfer the property back to the original or the debtor. with the understanding, with the blessing, specific blessing of the trustee in bankruptcy and the bankruptcy judge, that during the course of their repayment schedule, their repayment under Chapter 13 of bankruptcy law, that they will pay us back all past taxes, plus penalties, plus interest, water, garbage, you name it, they've got to pay us back, and that they will also remain current on all of their current taxes, water assessments, garbage fees, et cetera, and our attorney's fees, by the way. And if they do that, then the deed, which is being held in escrow, is actually released to them, they get the property back. So we need to have bankruptcy counsel out there looking after our interests, protecting our interests, and making sure that the city of Troy is going to be dealt with fairly as far as the bankruptcy process is concerned.
Questions, discussion, we're on 133.
Sure.
Yes, Councilmember
This
Gunn.
program that they have that we don't have, would it help if we had that program other than hiring an outside firm and paying them money?
I don't think I'm following your question.
You said there was a program that they had that they could get into, and you needed to be in that program in order to.
Oh, no, we still need somebody that has that skill set, that knows how to do that stuff.
All right, so we'll take specific skills.
Yeah.
Okay.
I will point out that, and we'll get to this later on, Maristeen and Maristeen is giving us good service at, I think, $250 a case, that's cheap, that's low, that's a bargain. And they do a good job. In fact, Ed Maristeen gave me some good news today about another one of these cases, same scenario, where the trustee in bankruptcy is gonna hold the deed in escrow until this person pays back all they owe the city of Troy. And that may take a couple of years, but we're also getting 36% interest on the back taxes, which no banks do.
Okay. Further questions, discussion? Very quiet. Okay.
That's what it is.
Ordinance 133, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? All right, 133 carries 6-0. 134, ordinance authorizing the city to create multiple capital projects and amending the capital projects fund budget to allow funding for capital projects. Council President Mantello at the request of the administration. Do I have a motion? Motion, Councilmember Garrett. Do I have a second?
Second the motion.
Second, Councilmember Kennedy. My only question with this one, Andy, we're doing it even if, is it okay to do it now despite the 2020 budget not going into effect?
Yeah, so it's all, so this ordinance is all based off the bond resolutions.
Mm-hmm.
The capital fund transcends years, so it's fine, in my opinion, to pass this tonight. I would only ask that at the council meeting, this is passed after the bond resolutions in the event that any, it's depending on how the bonds fall.
Totally. I mean, right now it's fine, but, yep. So,
Amended at the regular.
yeah, so we will, at the special meeting, Laura, do 134 after the bond rises. All right, we have a motion, we have a second, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay, 6-0. Ordinance 135, ordinance amending the code of the city of Troy, section 189, council member December. Do I have a motion? I will make a motion. Do I have a second? Second, council member Garrett. Discussion?
Council President.
Councilmember, yep.
So these are technical amendments to the code related to the Plastic-Free Hudson River Act, which we passed earlier this year. This is related to conversations that I've had. A letter was sent from Department of Taxation and Finance that we as the city, pursuant to the Environmental Conservation Law, section 27-2805, don't actually have the authority to take penalties on the paper bag reduction fee part. Taxation and Finance is the only one who has the authority to do that. So this is a technical amendment, and it won't. Essentially exempting the paper bag reduction fee from the penalties and reverse preemption clauses.
And probably just full disclosure, the DEC rules that are out there right now for commenting may change or slightly change the law that we passed, but, you know, I think we'll have to see what DEC does with that.
Right, and as we had that email correspondence, the parts related to the paper bag reduction fee aren't up in the DEC's comments section.
Perfect. Further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, 135 passes 6-0. Ordinance 136, ordinance authorizing and directing sale by the proposal sale method of city-owned real property. Councilmember Cummings. And I would like to make a motion on this. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second, Councilmember Gully, and I just want to thank Councilmember Cummings, Council-elect Sue Steele. They attended a meeting with Joe from the Rensselaer Land Trust and some neighbors in the immediate area of Euclid Ave, South Lake Ave, and Wendell Ave had not so much a major concern, but more, we need more information. And I think at the end of the day, everybody was on the same page. We want to keep the area a fairly like it is now, but a little safer. And I think the Knowles property, with that being potentially a part of it, that, you know, we have some work to do, and it sounds like the Rensselaer Land Trust still has some work to do involving this preserve. But I think there potentially was, you know, are we going to have lighting? Are we going to have paved walkways? And that certainly is not the objective, from what I understand from this meeting, that the Rensselaer Land Trust wants to do. And they essentially want to keep it primitive, keep it like it is, a little safer, but at the same time, make it more of a neighborhood preserve. So I want to thank the Rensselaer Land Trust for attending that meeting, and I don't know if my colleague, Councilmember Cummings, has anything to add.
Sure, no, we can.
Okay,
we-
perfect. Further discussion?
Thanks for all the neighbors coming out and,
Yes, it was very good, very productive meeting.
we'll all be on the same page.
Yes, we are. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, ordinance 136 carries 6-0. Let's go to resolutions. Resolution 92, resolution appointing commissioners of deeds for the city of Troy. Council President Mantello will take out at the request of the administration. Do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion.
Motion, Councilmember Kennedy. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second, Councilmember December. Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Resolution 92 passes 6-0. Resolution 93, resolution authorizing the execution of an agreement by and between the city of Troy and Collins Airline Service Station and Phil's Automotive. Do you have a motion?
I'll make a motion.
And that's Council President Mantella at the request of the administration.
I'll make a
Motion,
motion.
Councilmember Kennedy. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second, Councilmember Gully. Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Resolution 93 passes 6-0. Resolution 94, resolution authorizing the execution of an agreement by and between the city of Troy and WMV Golf Carts Inc. Do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion.
Motion, Councilmember Kennedy. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second, Councilmember December. On this discussion, my only question, California, why California? I did see it's about 320K for 4 years, but saying that, weren't we able to get anyone closer? New York, it's a California company?
It's local company. Their corporate is based in California.
So they are local?
Yes,
I mean, Yamaha has an international.
correct.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're, I mean, the people that you deal with for the legal are based in California.
Okay, well, it said California, that's all I said. So where are they out of?
Greg, do you know where they're out of? Huh? Albany.
Okay.
It goes out to bid. It went out for
Yeah. Okay. Further discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Resolution 94 carries 6-0. Resolution 95, resolution authorizing the mayor to enter into a 3-year agreement with Comstar LLC for ambulance billing services for fiscal years 2020, 2021, and 2022. Do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion.
Motion, Councilmember Kennedy. Do I have a second? Second, Councilmember Garrett, discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Resolution 95 carries 6-0. Resolution 96. Should we do this one after the others now?
Seeker has to go first.
Okay, resolution determining that proposed actions are type 2 actions for purposes of the New York State Environmental Quality Review Act. Council President Mantello at the request of the administration. Do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion.
Motion, Councilmember Kennedy. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second, Councilmember Cummings. Now, all of the bonds are in this seeker. Is it just, I just want to make sure, I mean, if the golf one's in it, I at least,
All bond resolutions are in the seeker.
okay, then, then we should talk about, because I can't support it with the golf one. I don't know about you guys.
Would there be a
I
separate?
support, that's what I'm saying.
You can approve a seeker without approving a bond resolution.
It's the secret
Would there be a
is,
separate seeker for the actual
Sure.
project?
Right,
so Chair, is the
Councilmember Kennedy.
secret is to finance, to provide financing. So would there actually be an environmental impact for providing
That's what I'm
financing?
thinking, I don't think,
Probably
No.
not.
They're all type 2. We went through everything in detail with Bond Shennick, Paul Reichel from Bond Shennick and King. They asked a lot of questions, and they're experts in when it comes to seeker. And everything was deemed to be type 2.
Council President?
yep, Councilmember
That
Cummings.
The actual master plan would go through a separate secret process. Because that's a significant
Right.
change to it.
That's,
Yes, through the process, yes. This is for the financial aspect.
It's
That's-
solely
that's-
financial.
Yes.
Further questions, discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Resolution 96 carries 6-0. Resolution 97, bond resolution for the city of Troy, New York, authorizing the issuance of $200,000 serial bonds to finance the cost of demolition of buildings and structures in the city. Council President Mantello, at the request of the administration, do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion.
Motion, Councilmember Gully, do I have a second? Second, Councilmember Kennedy, discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Resolution 97 carries 6-0. Resolution 98, bond resolution, City of Troy, New York, authorizing the issuance of $905,000 serial bonds to finance the cost of various projects for the Department of Public Works. Do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion.
Motion, Councilmember Kennedy. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second, Councilmember Gully. Discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Resolution 98 carries 6-0. Resolution 99, bond resolution, City of Troy, New York, authorizing the issuance of $800,000 serial bonds to finance the cost of various projects for the fire department. Council President Mantello, at the request of the administration, do I have a motion? Motion, we have a tie, but I'm going to give it to Councilmember Garrett. Do I have a second? Second, Councilmember December. Discussion? Just as a discussion for all of these, I know that we're working very hard to take some of the smaller equipment and smaller items and fund them through the general fund on the advice of the state comptroller. I know that all of us and everyone's working on that, so I just want to make a blanket statement, correct, Andy?
correct.
All right. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Resolution 69 carries 6-0. Resolution 100, farm resolution, City of Troy, New York, authorizing the issuance of $160,000 serial bonds to finance the cost of various equipment for the city golf course. Council President Mantello, at the request of the administration, do I have a motion? Motion, Councilmember Gully, do I have a second?
I'll second.
Second, Councilmember Kennedy, discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Resolution 100 carries 6-0. Resolution 101, bond resolution, City of Troy, New York, authorizing the issuance of $350,000 serial bonds to finance the reconstruction of various streets and sidewalks in the city. Council President Mantello, at the request of the administration, do I have a motion? Motion, Councilmember Garrett. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second, Councilmember Gully, discussion?
Council President,
Yes, Councilmember Cummings.
in the memo, it talks about city sidewalks. Is that sidewalks on city-owned property or just sidewalks in the city?
It was meant to be just a generic sidewalks in the city.
Okay. But I think we did have some discussion as to probably prioritize our own city-owned sidewalks to start. And then we're gonna be working on a program throughout the next year to help with all the rest.
Move the motion to vote.
Yes, Councilmember Garrett. Do you want to use this?
Is this, is this separate from, whatever streets that fits into the CPG?
Yes.
Correct, so this is separate from CDBG and CHIPS, this is
Okay.
other things,
Yeah.
really.
Good question. Further discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Resolution 101 carries 6-0. Resolution 102, bond resolution, City of Troy, New York, authorizing the issuance of 422,500 serial bonds to finance the cost of various projects for the Recreation Department. Council President Mantello at the request of the administration. Do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion.
Motion, Councilmember Kennedy. Do I have a second? Second, Councilmember Gully. Discussion. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Resolution 102 carries 6-0. Resolution 103, bond resolution for New York authorizing the issuance of $3.77 million serial bonds to finance the reconstruction of various bridges in the city. Council President Mantello at the request of the administration. Do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion.
Motion, Councilmember Kennedy. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second, Councilmember Gully. I'm confused on this one. It's the Campbell Ave, the bridge project. We received a grant. Council accepted the grant. Why does the resolution, I know I sent you an email, say various bridges and not?
That's how it was written. Bond council's fine with how it's written. Various bridges, it falls within that category. It's just written broadly. It will be used for the Campbell Ave Bridge.
That's my concern. Like say you're gone or whatever. I mean, circumstances change. The way it reads right now, it doesn't say Campbell Ave, and that's my only concern is that potentially, because if you look in, I think it was section 10 in the bond resolution actually says if you receive grant funding, you shouldn't bond. There was grant funding.
Section 10 says if you receive grant funding, it should be used to pay back the debt.
Okay, so we will front this and then get reimbursed?
Correct.
Is that,
It's cash flow. It's just like the seawall, South Troy Road, any project of that nature.
okay, and you're sure, like various bridges, it's fine?
It is fine.
Further discussion?
Is this,
Councilmember Cummings.
just off the top of my head, don't remember what was the grant amount?
3 points, the same amount as the bond resolution.
Yeah.
Great.
No, actually, it was 3.5, the grant we received. Yeah, I pulled it up. Where did I pull it up? I pulled it up. We approved it 2 months ago. It was for, bear with me, I got the. It was for 3.58, and we're bonding for 3.77.
Sure.
Is that the interest that we pay on?
I
Councilmember
don't-
Kennedy.
As every other bond we're approving today, we don't know the final cost. I just make a recommendation that we move the motion to vote.
I like your recommendation, but I want to find out why we're approving 200K more. Is it, it's a bond for 200 more than the grant. That's the only question.
Council President,
I think they're looking at.
I have an additional question. Thank you.
Yeah,
Thanks.
Councilmember.
Yeah. So if the cost of Campbell Ave Bridge comes out to be less than what we are buying for, are you opposed to using additional funding left over from the bond issuance for other bridges that need work?
I don't think we can.
If we use a broad definition for bridges, my question is, are you opposed to using the leftover funding for other bridges that need work?
I don't know if we can, council member, that would be up to,
My
I
question
honestly,
is, are you
I
opposed?
don't know if we're even legally allowed to.
Would you be
So my
opposed
question,
before?
I don't know. I'm not gonna say yes or no if it's not legal.
Okay,
So Andy, how do we wanna go with the 3.7, but what is the pad for? Do you
What is
know?
the what?
The 200.
My understanding was that the grant amount was 3.777 million.
Yeah, I mean, I got it right here.
the contract.
We use it on the bridge repair was short. Various bridges.
That'd be cool.
Well, the nice thing,
every bridge needs work. I mean,
it's the nice thing about it, there's something left over, it is labeled various bridges. I would assume that we could.
But this isn't for various bridges.
It's written as various bridges, but the intent is for Campbell Avenue.
Correct.
You could write various, it's like the fire department, it's various vehicles, it doesn't say
Right.
fire pumper. It says various pieces of equipment. I mean, that's what this means. It says various bridges, but the intent is for the Campbell Avenue bridge.
I get it. We normally, the Knickerbocker, we specifically state Knickerbocker, South Troy Pool. This tonight.
No, I understand that
Specifically, that's
This
all.
was the information given to bond council, and this is how it was written.
They wrote it up and they might have just,
I mean, we've got a regular meeting. Can we move on?
further discussion and we'll
You'll get
pass
us
it and you'll get
right.
us an answer for the special. Okay? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Resolution 103 carries 6-0. Resolution, I don't have that page anymore. Resolution 104. I have to look on this now. Bond resolution, now I left. Thank you. Bond resolution, City of Troy, New York, authorizing the issuance of $3.436,984 serial bonds to finance the reconstruction and improvement of the golf course in the city. Councilmember Cummings, at the request of the administration, do you have a motion?
I'll make a motion.
Motion, Councilmember Kennedy, do you have a second?
Second.
Second, Councilmember Dudley. Discussion, this is just me and I'm just talking, bigger picture, $3.4, million obviously is, quite a bit, on our taxpayers. I love the golf course. I love what Greg and, Josh have done with the golf course. I think they've done an incredibly amazing job. I know that this would be spanned out over a 3 or 4 year period. And saying all that, this is just me, bigger picture. I know we're trying to get the golf course more on track to bring in more revenue. But if we're in a position to bond for $3.4 million, I think the timing's bad. We have pocket parks that just need incredible attention. We have roads that need attention. I can literally count them in my head every time I drive them, every time people call. We have real needs here in the city of Troy for infrastructure. And I just, as much as I love to frequent the golf course, I want to see it improve. I just cannot justify $3.4 million bonding right now on the taxpayers when we have so many other needs. And then additionally, we all know the people that utilize the golf course, it's people from all over. It's a destination. It has a domino impact, obviously, on our economy. I love the golf course. What I'm recommending is that the revenues that we receive from the golf course, if we're really into outside of the monies we just bonded earlier for equipment, we put half of those revenues back into the golf course. We make about $500K revenues a year. We put half of those right back into the golf course over a certain period of time. But me personally, it's just my vote. And I'm not influencing anyone or anything. I just can't vote for this bond right now. It's not the time. and we need more infrastructure needs, and our pocket parks are in incredible need of upgrading. So I just can't support this right now.
Chair,
Councilmember Tim.
would you support the bond issuance if you were assured that the investment would be paid back within 10 years based on the revenues realized from the investment?
Now, what I want to see, if we're right now going to bond for 3.4 million, I'm going to make a recommendation that we put our efforts into $3.4 million in bonding for roads, for our pocket parks, for the other infrastructure needs that we need throughout the city. So I cannot support it at this time.
Council President?
One more.
Councilmember Gunn. Yep. go ahead.
Go ahead, Council President.
Why didn't you suggest a bond resolution for what you're suggesting you invest in prior to tonight's meeting?
We don't have that in front of us. But honestly, it's my vote. You can vote
No, I
the way
don't.
you want.
I
I'll
just-
vote the way I want. Duly noted.
Chair.
Councilmember Gully and then Councilmember Cummings.
So Chair, I understand what you're saying and I agree with what you're saying if they were both on an even keel. But we're looking, one, that's an expenditure for better streets, and I understand that. What we're talking about here is a business investment that gives us a return on that investment. We receive revenues from this course and we lose more money than I think probably anybody realizes here on the days that the course is down. Not only through the fact that the golfers don't come because of the weather, but the 3 or 4 days after that weather comes through, we only have half a course. And I'll just kind of relate it like this. If you had a 2-family house and you had a beautiful face on that house and it looked great and everybody wanted to come there, but every time it rained, your first floor flooded out and you had to have nobody in there for the time it's flooded out, you would not have a good investment. You'd have an empty space that's not utilized, that's not generating revenues towards its full potential or its purpose. I understand this is a big number, but the reality is this is not a number that's going to be spent. This is a number that's in reserve to accumulate improvements over a 5-year period. During that 5-year period, there'll not only be the 500K you talked about, there'll be an escalation of revenue from the time that it's able to stay open and the fact that it's open to stay open longer, and the fact that once the course is polished, what I mean by that is it looks beautiful on top, but you have a very scary understructure that could take away all that beauty in a half a season, in 2 weeks. 2 weeks of rain could ruin all the work that we have on that back nine. And we've invested $1.25 million into an irrigation system. I'm just saying that they didn't look at doing the drainage at that point, which would have been a more focused move at that time. But it didn't. We weren't there. We brought in a person that looked at the course not only for the top and made the top look very well, but also has a concern to the underbody of that course that keeps its longevity strengthful. And we need to understand that the golf course is an investment. I realize we need roads done. I realize we need structural pieces of the city done and funded. I know our parks can use some refacing, but some of this equipment and some of this effort on that course is going to free up labor hours and manpower to take better adequate care of our parks that are under their guide. And the equipment is going to be used there as well as just the golf course. So what I ask you to think about is the long-term effect of the decision tonight, because 10, 20 years down the road, we will still be reaping the benefits of our decision tonight that will expend a 5-year note or maybe a 10-year note. But at the end of the day, at the end of the project, it will have paid for itself and it will have accumulated additional revenues that will continue on for 10, 20, 30 years down the road. And all these improvements, we don't know if it'll be 3.4. We make that assumption, but we want to be prepared. And I like Andy's thoughts. I mean, this would be a perfect time to think about this type of project because we don't know where the rates are going to go on bonding. We don't know what we're going to pay. Just a small amount of interest on those notes could accumulate to hundreds of thousands of dollars that we will pay out because the work will eventually have to be done. Whether you do it today or whether you do it next year, it's going to have to be done. And our condition is not going to change in the next 3 years with our streets, with our pocket parks, unless we can make a way to get better efficiency out of our park and rec crew, which includes our golf course. So I'm going to support it, and I'm not going to support it because I'm a golfer. I'm going to support it because I think it's a good business investment over a long-term period, not the next 5 years, but the next 10, 15, 20 years. It's a smart business move to be prepared and get your money at a very low rate and put it to the side, and utilize it when you need it. But the main thing is we can get the real strength in that course by taking the drainage and making it acceptable enough to keep the course open, which will drive more profits through the door.
Thank you, Councilmember Gully. Councilmember Cummings.
Yeah, I mean, I think of all the proposals in this big thing, the drainage in the back nine seems like it has the most clear, immediate payback. And but I guess I'm still having trouble with a deep understanding of sort of what the business plan is here. How much room do we have to grow? I emailed a bunch of questions. I'm wondering whether we can get answers to some of those today before we go out on this. I don't know how, I don't want to get into tons of weeds here, which is why I hope to do it by email. But the core of it is, what is our room to grow on the fee structure, and what is our room to grow on the total amount of people utilizing the golf course?
So I guess a couple of things. Greg Tudor's here. I think it's best probably to bring him up to speak to the operations of the golf course and the operational benefits to doing the course, right? But I guess attached, just passed out are the unit numbers that are requested for 2017, 18, and 19. So that's the information that you asked for there. This afternoon, I worked with Josh Buell. Josh did a tremendous job in a short amount of time to kind of project at the golf course twofold. A, what do the units look like? The units being all this stuff that's on this sheet. And also look at where he sees the rates going. While also looking at what the golf course revenue looks like with the drainage done and without the drainage done. Because there's a lot of things that Josh and Greg want to do with the rates at the golf course, but they're contingent upon this work being done to make people want to play there. When you look at the difference from 2021 through 2030, by doing the drainage, Josh estimated that there'd be an increase in revenue of $2.7 million over if the drainage wasn't done.
Is there an annual increase there?
The annual increase varies from $89,000. It goes up to 288, 336, 394, and then we flatlined it at 267 annually because going out that far and looking at units, we're trying to be conservative. But just doing the drainage leads to an increase in revenue of $2.7 million.
And that's no Mother Nature,
Well,
incidents.
you have to remember that his base years are 17, 18, and 19, where there's weather issues every year. Greg can speak to the number of days lost on the back
I
nine
get it.
there.
I get it.
And Josh is approximating that the golf course alone in 2019 lost $110,000 because of weather.
And, I know when the irrigation, because I was in league when the first bond went into place for 1.2 mil, the council at that time was also told, we're going to be able to control the course a little better. There were major issues, obviously, with that irrigation system. I don't know why they didn't go into the back nine where there really are drainage issues, the last 3 holes. But saying that, we already bonded 1.2. The council at that time, and I won't say their names, I spoke to one, they were told the same thing, we're gonna bring in more revenue, boom, boom, boom. For me, this is just not the time, but we're talking obviously the numbers, so go ahead.
If anyone has any other number of questions, I'll answer them. I do think it's important for the council to hear from Greg and the architect who came up with the master plan.
So one, before we switch,
Councilman.
just to drill down on the work you did with Josh. So is that basically based on assumption of having the back nine open in the ways that it was, about as much as the front nine was this year? We get the drainage done, then the front nine and the back nine should be more comparable in terms of when they can be open. Is that correct?
They'll be fully comparable.
So from our discussions, that means the back nine probably adds, I mean, compared to this year, it's another month of usage on the back nine-ish.
So Josh estimated 110,000 in 19 alone, but looking at his unit
So
projection,
had the back nine been open in 2019, the back nine would have made an extra $100,000.
110.
And then, great. Okay, so that's what those, are there other things that those projections are based on? Because it went up to.
So it's also looking at fee structure changes.
So
But
if we're more
Josh,
consistent, if we're doing better, we think we can raise the fees to be more comparable with similar golf courses in the area.
correct.
And what is that room to grow in terms of what's the actual dollar value there?
You talking about totals or
How
on
do
the
we
fees?
compare to a someone, you know, yeah, how much less are we still, even with the raises we did last month? How much less are we than similar courses?
We're the best value around right now. I don't have,
Sure.
I don't have those compared.
Okay. I mean, so it might back the envelope, obviously it's super back the envelope because we don't have clear numbers on when this debt will be issued and what the timeline is. But, you know, if we kept the same number of golfers, we'd need to increase the average cost per round by $8. If we increase the number of golfers, then that would be able to drop. Is that in the range of what we're thinking? I mean, is it possible to increase what we're earning per round on average? Of course, there's lots of different ways people are getting around golf.
Absolutely. I mean, we're gonna be able to open sooner, we're gonna be able to.
Is that prohibitive? Right now, it's what, $21, $23?
So an 18-hole round right now for a resident going into 2020 is $20. For non-residents, $28. But I think what Greg's trying to say is, right, is by doing the drainage, you also change the time you're able to open the course and close the course. So it's not just a direct linear, I have to increase the rate $7 because you're gonna have
An extra
$20 and $28 or any other fee that's not a pass coming in earlier.
Sure.
And again, the fee restructure that Josh is looking at doing is, you know, fewer weekend tournaments and moving those to weekdays, which opens up Saturdays and Sundays to public golf, which increases the revenue there, and other items through there. It's just a matter of, there's a feeling that to make the course more playable, the drainage needs to be done in order to achieve the fee restructure.
Right.
Chair,
Yes,
Yeah.
Councilmember Pizarro.
what is the analysis for the fee changes? Because, so during this budget, I pulled up my budget report in general services. We are increasing $100 each already. The city of Schenectady charges $1,200 for residential, $950 for senior passes. Are these projections looking to create parity to somewhere like Schenectady?
So what was the $1,200 one? Which one?
That, $1,200
No, I
for
know.
residential and $950 for senior passes.
So under this analysis, it would, in 2024, so it's a $100 incremental increase to $1,000 for a senior resident in 2024. And a resident non-senior would be $1,500 in 2024.
So is that,
He's looking at $100 incremental increases on an annual basis until 2024, and then keeping them flat through 2030.
that was the point of what I was trying to, so is this, is it common for us to increase $100 a year, this many years? What does that look like for the average, pass holder?
Yeah. The value of your pass is gonna go up as the course improves. To talk to your point, Schenectady, you, our direct competitors, they did all these renovations over the last few years.
we're at a point where we're gonna need to be able to stay competitive with our competition. We're at a crossroads here with the golf course where we've taken it to a point, condition wise, this is as good as we can get it without taking these next steps. And I agree, it's a lot of money, it's a big investment, but it's a huge asset for the city. And we can't do our jobs, we can't let golfers out there, we can't work. It's just, we're at a point where we need to take that next step.
Yeah, but you really, I mean, Greg, and I applaud everything you and Josh, I mean, seriously, compared to, I want to say 3 years ago, we've come full circle. And like I said, I played in a league, I can't now because of 2 jobs, the kids, but I play frequently as much as I can. The course is amazing. However, for me, you're talking about increasing the fees. I think first you have to show that the usage is there. You can't just go increase fees if the usage isn't there. If people aren't going to, you obviously first have to test it out. So for us to be able to say, okay, in 2024, we're raising those fees 150. You don't know. It's all based on the market. We might not be able to. And so saying that, like I said, for me, it's, it's $48 right now with cart. You're talking, I'm saying down the road, people may not want to pay that. And it's a huge, I think, chance to put on the taxpayers. All of us want to see our golf course be the best it can be, but at the same time, we're not, in the business of obviously being, a golf business. And so saying that our job here is to ensure that the taxpayers are getting police, fire, the roads. I mean, literally to me, a block away from the golf course, not even a block away, we still have cones up from the weather from the one on Sage Ave. We still have cones where the ground was upheaved in the corner, literally right by Park Pub. So for me to turn around and say to the people at Troy, we're gonna put 3.4 over the next 5 years, boom, 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 I just can't do it. And it has nothing to do, this is a great plan. For me, this is not the time. And, I'd like to see some of the revenues go back into the course. I cannot authorize 3.4 when some of our roads need wicked repair, our pocket parks are in disrepair. I just can't. And, honestly, I was a little offended that this resolution, I'm going to be really honest, came to us at this time, because during the budget meeting, we never once talked about a bond for $3.4 million. And, to get it last week, I'm like, what? I honestly looked at the legislation. I'm like, wait a minute, did I miss something? I went back to the notes. I went back to the budget report. We never talked during the budget time about $3.4 million investment on our taxpayers. So, for me, I just can't swallow it now. The others may be able to. It has nothing to do with you. You're doing an amazing job. I just can't right now.
So you bond less?
Monica,
Sure.
please,
I'm asking, you just.
Councilmember Kennedy.
Yes, I'll go with that. I think it's unfair that taxpayers for you to present this resolution as an either or decision for the taxpayers, but I also think that for us to not pass this is literally the only investment we can make for the city of Troy where there's a direct revenue that will realize more revenues that will pay back the investment that we're making. Every other resolution that we make, there's no direct revenue attached that will pay it back. Not only is there direct revenue attached to this resolution, there will be indirect revenues realized through tax values increasing around the park, what have you, attracting more staff, I would assume, that want to work at the park. People would probably want to use it. I really think it's irresponsible of us for not to make this investment right now. We are in the business of providing golf and recreation to our taxpayers. If you look at the daily users that play golf, it's in the thousands. We recently approved 1.5 million for a pool that has, less, maybe 100 on a good day of people using it. And then we want to approve another 3.4 million for another pool that have hundreds of people that use it. So I think when you equate the investment versus usage and the return on the investment and the revenues that can be realized, this is a very smart decision, regardless of the timing. It seems that the timing is appropriate based on the market and the rates that are available. And if the council members here who haven't already made up their mind prior to this meeting, based on what we've learned today, if they are amenable to reducing the bond value, if they're uncomfortable with bonding for the full phased approach, if they only want to bond for part of the phases to see how the progress and the revenues are realized from the first phase, I make a recommendation that we amend the bond to a lesser value in order to keep the progress moving on this amazing asset that we have in the city.
Thank
The
you,
other question
Councilman.
that I have is, for the golf superintendents, is there a driving range in the future for the park?
There's currently not room for a driving range. Part of this plan, there will be a renovated stand and practice area to the field just north of current practice area. And that's one of the phases.
Thanks, Greg.
Chair,
Yep, Councilmember December.
just while we're on the topic of, and thank you all for being here and providing this information. I know everyone's working really hard. What are the, just thinking about amenities in the Freer Park Golf area itself, are there any other public amenities? So if you're not a season pass, is there any ways the public can, are there trails around the golf course? Are there any other public pieces to this project?
There isn't anything directly related to the master plan, but the domino effect of improving the golf course, we felt throughout the entire park. We'll be able to utilize, right now we're doing a tremendous amount of hand labor in these areas that we can't drive large machines into. We'll then use that labor in the parks, the ball fields, the entryways, the ripple effect throughout the park. So all those things.
Chair,
Councilmember Gully.
I'd like to add to that answer. There is a trail system that runs through the Freer Park area, through the golf course and around the ponds that is utilized by a lot of walkers with dogs and without. There's restaurants, Park Pub, which is very popular in that area for their foods, and they've escalated their business through the golfing community. As we look to improve this course, we're gonna start, I know if you don't golf, you wouldn't understand this, but golfers are addicted to perfection. They want country club setting at a public price. What Mr. Tudor and his staff has done is provide that on the top. But we're losing money because we can't keep it all functionable all the time, and we can't expand to an earlier season or a later season once the moisture hits the ground, because it just makes it inoperable to drive a mower, a golf cart, and a lot of golfers who are into that perfection do not want to walk across a fairway in the mud. The reality is they come out to have a pleasurable time. The more we provide that, the more our trails will get used, the more the restaurants, from the Naughty Pine to Da Vinci's to even McDonald's, they get hit because they're right there around that area. So the investment in this course doesn't only just affect golfers. It affects everybody who goes to the park for the many reasons. There's a softball field there inside, and we have softball teams that come up and play and practice there. That all escalates to more revenue and more movement in the park and more popularity. It's a bigger picture than just spending money on a golf course. This is a way bigger picture than that, and I just hope that we can understand that there is that ripple effect and there is that growth of income through all those pieces. And I just want you to know there are other options there that are utilized all summer long and even in the winter. There's people who walk the trails.
The people that walk them in the winter are very happy it's closed. I'm sorry, because I walk with them and I know them really well, sorry. But saying that, I did look up while the discussion was going on in the stadium, you know, you're looking at $47, I think Capital, hold on, I looked up Capital, they're $46. And now you're talking, you know, in a year or 2 years, $56 for Freer. So seriously, I truly would just say that while you're comparing our course, you keep talking, well, we can raise the rates, we can raise the rates. You can only raise them so much. And, you know, if people are gonna pay $56 for 18 ampere, that's one thing, you know, if they go to Capitol Hills for 46. So saying that, I don't want people to think, you know, oh, we put this investment in every year, we're going to be able to raise. That's not the way it works. That, you know, that's not the way economies of scale work. But saying that, does anyone else have discussion, questions? I want to try to take a slow roll, get this
Absolutely.
moving.
Chair, before you do that, I'd like to point one thing out. Saratoga National gets $165 an hour. Saratoga Park gets $60. The private courses, Sagamore and those courses, which I will tell you, I played those courses. And Mr. Tudor has provided that type of benefit to our local golfers. So I do think it's possible because they'll pay the price to play a quality course, especially if you don't have to drive out of our city to do it. So it's there. I mean, we're comparing some courses around here in Stadium.
It's still a public course.
Well,
but
yes,
yeah.
but what
Anyway.
I'm saying is that people will pay more to play there
I got
than
you.
they will at these other courses that you mentioned.
Thank you, Councilmember Gully. Councilmember Cummings.
Well, I guess while we have the architect here, I wonder if we could get a little bit of an overview. The first, the geology, or I guess, I don't know, are you involved with the dewatering project?
Drainage, yes.
Drainage project as well as the redesign of the holes?
Yes.
Could you talk a little bit about what makes you confident that we can make it less money more of the time, basically?
Sure. My name's Mark Mungem. I'm a golf course architect with Mungem Golf Design out of Massachusetts. Hope you don't mind. I'm a WPI graduate, an RTI graduate, studied civil engineering in my engineering work and golf course work. Have done a lot with drainage. I just finished a project actually at Franklin Park Golf Course in Boston, where we drained 3 holes to be able to make them more playable and to allow carts to be able to use the golf course when it is wet in the spring and fall. So it's a topic of which I'm very familiar with in my work. And I know there's a lot of push and pull about spending the money for golf. You know, it doesn't seem like a logical place to spend money. In doing this master plan, really that wasn't the impetus behind the master plan. The impetus was to how to make the golf course better, how to make it more efficient to maintain. As I see it, you're spending a lot of additional monies on labor, which labor costs, as you know, are increasing greatly, on doing repetitive jobs, which you wouldn't need to do if you were to do some of the work that's in the plan. The first 2 priorities of the plan are drainage work, as we've been talking about, and also sand bunkers. We haven't really talked about sand bunkers tonight, but I think, you know, the course is years and years old and there's never been any work done on the bunkers. They don't drain, they fill with water, and they erode after heavy rains. And so part of this work would be to redo the bunkers so that they have drainage in them, so that the water is removed without Greg and his crew having to go in there and pump them out after each rain. Same with the drainage in the fairways and roughs, is to make sure that water is being removed from the course. And it's obviously a design process to do that. I'm confident that we would be able to facilitate the water removal and also improve the areas around the course from getting some of the runoff, which they currently get. So it would be a combination project of providing some stormwater control and also drainage of the course.
Is the soil clay or sand, or what's the soil like?
It's a heavy glacial till soil. It's not an easy soil to drain. It would require a pretty close spacing of piping to be able to remove the water.
Right.
But in limited areas, it's not the whole course, it's just limited areas within the course.
But you've done it in this sort of soil, or people have?
Yes,
It's
absolutely.
not like this is uncharted territory.
This is not uncharted territory, not at all.
And then, all right, so the dealing with water issues, the first phase, definitely seems like has some clear translation into how it could attract more golfers. The redesign, you talked a bit about how it could save us money in maintenance, which is great. I mean, right now we're, there's opportunity there. Do we have a sense of what that scale there is? I mean, honestly, I'd prefer to have a business plan that works out these numbers before we voted on this sort of level of bonding, but can you give us a broad sense of what that means in terms of how much labor can be redirected to other city priorities? What's being used on these repetitive tasks right now?
I'd say 5 to 8% of your maintenance cost.
Which is, I don't know what the maintenance budget is off the top of my head. I don't know, 100,000.
Chair.
Councilmember Cummings still has the floor.
You can go ahead. I'm just looking for
Okay, Councilmember Kennedy.
Will the council have another opportunity to vote to approve project moving forward prior to spending is issued, such as in secret review?
So it would depend where the seeker went to. Went to planning commission or the city of Troy.
Well, once we authorize, it's authorized.
Well, bond wise, the full project's up because it's cheaper to write one bond resolution than it's $5. Costs about $600 plus advertising every time you pass a bond resolution. We thought that this was the most cost-efficient way and effective way for the city. It's brought tonight because if it's not passed, realistically, if it comes back, if this was brought in January or February, it was not making the February issuance, which means Greg can't start any work. Greg can't start engineering because it's not in the 2020 budget because it was through this. If it were to pass until the August issuance. So there's no work done in the 2020 season. There's going to be engineering by the time you engineer in the lab. It's not going to be any work done in the 2021 season. That's the reason why this was brought forward now in this fashion.
And frankly, it really should have been discussed during the budget. I mean,
Chair.
that's what I'm throwing in here. Councilmember.
If you think this isn't the right time, when do you think would be the right time?
I can't say that. When our roads, our pocket parks, and other major infrastructure issues get addressed. For me, we are spending more time tonight on a $3.4 million bond for the golf course than we are spending for pocket parks and other things. This is a nice proposal. I didn't interrupt you. This is a good proposal, Greg. For me, it's just not the time. Councilmember Gelli.
Chair.
It's just not true.
So, Greg, in the pieces of this puzzle, we know that the drainage is most important, and we also know that the bunker drainage is just as important. If we were to separate them from this 5-year plan to try to minimize the exposure here to what some council members think are spending money and not investing money, I would like to know what that number is. And 2, I'd like to say that, there's a big difference when you spend your money and you don't get anything out of it. And our job also, besides trying to save the money, is to find ways to drive and raise revenue outside of the taxpayer pocket. This is one way. This is our revenue generator along with our water, but this is how we drive revenues outside of the taxpayer pocket. And you have to put something into it to get the most out of it. It's like I said, it's like having a 2-floor house and having your first floor flood out. And 2 months, 3 months, 4 months out of the year, you gotta vacate it. It's just, this is how we make adjustments to raise revenues to save our taxpayers, and we need to be more business minded.
Sharon,
So what would that number be?
What's the
Councilmember
cost?
Gully has the question.
What's the cost of the back nine?
Councilmember, hold on, Councilmember Kennedy, Councilmember Gully has the question, then you can have the floor.
What's the cost of the
Councilmember
back
Gully,
nine?
Councilmember Kennedy, Councilmember Gully has a question, please. Thank you.
I would like to know if you know what the expense of the first piece, the most important piece, the drainage, what the course would be into to cure that, because that would be certainly the most important piece to get the most optimal use out of the course.
1,870,000.
Councilmember Kennedy.
What is the cost of the back nine? Yeah, all improvements to the back nine.
We really didn't break that out. The back nine isn't broken out from the front nine. This is the full 18-hole project. So that includes bunkers on the front nine.
And what does the 1.8 million represent?
The 1.87 million is for the proposed drainage improvements on the 18-hole course. It is for redoing the bunkers, and it's for a drainage and wash pad at the maintenance building, and for some forward tees. I'm sorry.
Would the other members be amenable to amending the resolution to reflect the necessary needs to protect our past and future investments in the golf course?
You can make a motion.
I
If
would
you
like
wanna
to
make a
open the
motion.
floor to discussion about whether or not they
You
think-
can make a motion if you
Right.
want to amend.
We can't discuss whether or not they would support.
Councilmember.
So the number we're talking about is this number that we've drawn out. What is the, what's the rest of the funds associated with this bond going towards? In other words, I guess what I'm trying to figure out is, will the 1 point so-and-so cover the long-term?
This is inappropriate. This is inappropriate. It's not like.
Councilmember.
So I guess I'm just trying to understand what we're breaking apart. What is the 1 point number that you referenced, and then what is left over that you wouldn't be able to do without this full bond?
Sure. The 1.87, as I said, is for drainage, bunkers, some improvements at the maintenance building, and for forward tees. What it does not include is improvements to cart paths. It doesn't improve additional tees and leveling of some of the existing tees, which are currently unlevel. It doesn't include some tree work. It doesn't include I'll call it a new fifth hole, a shortened fifth hole, and a changed sixth hole, and a lengthened 17th hole. And it does not include some work on the 16th area. It also does not include paving of the maintenance area yard, landscaping at the maintenance area, and a pole barn for material and equipment storage at the maintenance area.
See, we don't have what you have. We have a task list.
Correct.
So for me, literally to change this bond number, it would have to be much, much more specific. And we have this task list. So what
you're saying
do we
it's-
have as opposed to what you have?
Sure, that's what I'm using. The task list has a priority or phasing, A, B, C, D, and E.
Okay,
And basically, A and B is the 1.87 million,
okay.
and the rest, C, D, E, and E phases is the remainder.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry about
That's
that.
better.
Sorry about that.
I'm like, okay, wait a minute. Thank you.
Council President?
Yes, Councilmember Cummings.
So the A and B phases sound like certainly the A phase is sort of a large engineering project. The B phase, and certainly the subsequent phases, are there bits of that could be sort of broken out into a longer timescale of work that we do internally or with revenues? Certainly, I think it sounds like the A phase drainage project that clearly is a big capital investment. how much of this other stuff can be done more piecemeal and as revenue allows? Or are there economies of scale to doing it at that level?
Yeah, there are certainly economies of scale. The more that you can do at one time, the less expensive it is to do that work. Because if you do multiple projects, you're paying for mobilization every time, engineering and design every time. So you understand that. But yes, certainly a project like the drainage project is one I would want you to take on at one time and do it in a single phase. There are courses that I work with that every year they spend a certain amount of money and they just keep picking off and doing things. They work within basically one hole. They'll do the tees and the bunkers on that hole, then they'll go to the next hole the next year. That sort of a process. Tees and bunkers can be spread out, if you will. It's better to do bunkers at one time. Tees, I think you can really.
Bunkers require specialized equipment to do,
Yes.
essentially?
Yes.
Whereas creating a new tee is that mostly mowing it differently and planting something different there, or what does that involve to create a new tee?
No, it involves bringing in some materials and leveling them and some earthwork. So it's not quite as simple as mowing, but it is something that you can easily phase it.
The other component to the bunkers is some drainage within the bunkers. When we do the main line drainage, we want to tie those lines into the fairways as well. So we kind of look at them all as a whole as a project. One goes into the others. You wouldn't want to piece them in because they're doing it all at once.
That makes sense.
I just wanted to clarify earlier the comment about the irrigations or the irrigation system that was installed.
Yeah.
There was no drainage component to that irrigation system. It was just an irrigation system. So I know you mentioned 3 of the holes didn't have drainage, but it was the irrigation system was one project. There was no drainage involved in that project.
I do like shortening the 5th. Whether I vote for this or not, the 5th needs to be shortened. So, Councilmember Gully.
I lost my train of thought after that, Council President. I'm just thinking in the mechanism of business, if we're gonna cut up the course to put in drainage, we'd wanna do that just one time. So you tie the bunkers in, and you know what bunkers are, right? They're the sand pits that are around the green.
Yeah.
So they're really in relative close proximity to the green where you want the water to run away anyways. I think trying to break that up into small projects could cause future problems as you try to always, drain out the bunker and then try to tie it into a line that's already there, and you're just chopping up the course numerous times, which causes a lot of patchwork and repair in the future. If we do it at once and we get it done, then it's finished, and maybe we can take a good hard look over the next couple of years at the results from that. We can work towards the other projects. But I do think that you said A and B.
Correct.
A and B would, and it brings us down to 1.87. It won't make any difference because then we'll just do the work in another 3-4 years. We'll just have to come back and bond again. But
We'll have a clearer sense at that point.
right, and I think that is true. So I would favor that amendment if you want to do that.
We're talking about adding $600 to the total cost, right?
Give or take, yes. That's on the bond.
Right.
The writing, right?
Plus a little bit after that.
Transition, whatever their interest rate is at that time compared to today.
So, further discussion, does anyone want to make a motion?
Yeah, sure.
Yes,
I'll make
Councilmember Tennant.
a motion to amend the resolution to reduce the bonding amount to reflect the phase A and B of the master plan, which would reduce it to, what amount, Andy? What's the total final amount of the phase A and B?
$1,870,000. This would be, just so everyone knows, it's an amendment to the title.
Right.
It's an amendment to section 1. Becomes 1.87 million. It's an amendment to section 2, which is obviously 1.87 million. Yes, that's it, just section, so it's the title, sections 1 and sections 2. Section 1.
Sections 1 and 2, correct? Yep. Wait a minute, section 2, yes, no other stuff. Okay. We have a motion on the floor to amend resolution 104 from 3.436984 to 1.787 no dollars, 1.87.
1,870,000.
Okay, 1.87, that's what we got. All right, we have a motion on the floor to reduce the amount. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second, Councilmember Gully, discussion. I'm going to do a slow roll. Councilmember Gully,
Yes.
Councilmember Garrett,
No.
Councilmember Cummings,
Yes.
Councilmember Parator's absent, Councilmember December.
Yeah, just to explain my vote, I think this is more reasonable in terms of what we're looking at. I agree with the council president about a lot of our parks in the city do need investments. In my budget report, I did include that we've got already $130,000 a year that we're paying for the sprinkler system up through 2028. I don't necessarily think that if I were a pass holder that I would be willing to pay these kinds of increases in the rates. I don't think that's makes sense to me. But working in good faith on this, I'll support this. I'll support this.
The
Yes.
amendment.
Aye.
Yep. Councilmember Kennedy.
Yes.
I'm going to explain my vote. I'm voting no, and I'm voting no because of two major reasons. One, I appreciate the amendment coming down, but more importantly, I really want to see something as major to this magnitude. We should have talked about it during budget. You know my feelings in terms of the infrastructure, our roadways and our intersections, and more importantly, our pocket parks. So saying that this resolution's in front of us, I would hope the administration down the road puts a resolution in front of the council, which with the same vigor for our real infrastructure and pocket park needs. So I vote no. The resolution amendment goes down on the,
No.
yeah, you need 5. Yeah, you
And
do.
finance,
There's-
the finance
Oh,
committee,
the finance, yes,
committee, you need a
that's
simple majority.
Correct, I'm sorry, the special meeting. And so this resolution is amended. On the amended resolution, do I have a motion?
Motion.
Motion, Councilmember December, do I have a second?
Second.
Second, Councilmember Gully, discussion. I do also want to tell you, you will need, because it is less than the 24 hours in terms of the special meeting, we will need 2/3 for the vote because it now is amended, okay? For the special, for the special. Correct, and it's a bond anyway, so, but if, we need the 2/3 anyway. So saying that, further discussion, we have a motion, we have a second on the amended resolution. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? No.
No.
So passes, 104 passes. 4-2. 105, bond resolution, City of Troy, New York, authorizing the issuance of an additional $150,000 serial bond to finance the reconstruction of South Troy Pool. Council President Mantello, at the request of the administration, do I have a motion?
Motion.
Motion, Councilmember December, do I have a second? Second, Councilmember Gully. Monica, can you fill us in with the 150?
The $150,000 is on top of the first phase that's already been bonded. This will pay for additional concrete work on the deck itself. And then it will also replace the windows in the facility, as well as put brand new fencing around the entire facility as well.
And this was this in the original bid, et cetera? Is this additional work or?
The original plan that you have from the inspection that was completed. That was a part of that, but it was not included in this original scope of work. It's, like I said, it's additional, it's like a phase 2 of the park itself, of the pool itself, sorry.
But are these sidewalks directly WSU around the pool?
So there's the replacement of we had to do the first, so the gutter area that we just installed, and then the beyond, like the section beyond that is included in the first phase. And then beyond that, going up towards the the building itself, we're looking to do all of those, because a lot of those are old and they have never been replaced. So we're looking to upgrade all of those as well too.
So in the immediate, the first phase, all of the work's done, and what you're saying is this.
Not all of the work is done, they didn't complete the second pad of core because of the weather this year. But they'll finish that in the spring. They still have to commission the pool, so to speak. It's because we haven't gave them their full funding until the pool is operational and up and running 100%, and tested and done all that stuff. So once that'll be finished in the spring, and then this is additional work we're hopeful to get into the spring before we open up the pool in July.
Okay. Further discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Resolution 105 carries 6-0. Resolution 106, bond resolution of City of Troy, New York, authorizing the issuance of $325,500 serial bonds to finance the cost of various projects for the police department. Council President Mantello at the request of the administration. Do I have a motion? Motion, Councilmember Garrett. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second, Councilmember Kennedy. Discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? 106 carries 6-0. Bond resolution 107, bond resolution of City of Troy, New York, authorizing the issuance of $647,500 serial bonds to finance the cost of various projects for the garbage department. I've never heard it referred to as the garbage department, and they wrote that in the reso also.
It's fine.
I know it's fine, it's just a
I'll make
little
a
odd.
motion.
Mantello at the request of the administration. Do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion.
Councilmember Kennedy motions. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second, Councilmember December. Discussion?
Council President?
Yes, Councilmember Cummings.
Are these both for actual garbage or recycling, or both for garbage trucks?
I couldn't tell you right now, but.
Do we know?
Yeah, if they're in the
I guess
end
the core question there is, are there DEC funds that are coming to help us with any of this?
I didn't see any.
No, the DEC funding that was presented.
Can you use
was
the mic, Monica, please?
Sure. The DEC funding that was represented in the budget that we went through at the general services meeting was more for the education and outreach, about $100,000 that was increased in that in the special recycling fund. It was,
They do help with recycling truck infrastructure too, right?
They do as well too, so yeah.
If there are recycling trucks here, let's make sure we
Correct.
utilize that.
Correct, absolutely, and it's a first come, first served basis until they drain the account, so there's not like a special time to have to apply or anything like that.
Thank you.
Okay.
But they don't cover any trash.
They,
Right.
DEC,
DEC,
no,
no.
anything, it has to be recycled.
Further discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Bond resolution 107 carries 6-0. Resolution 108, resolution authorizing the retention of outside legal counsel and other law-related matters. Council President Mantello at the request of the administration. Do I have a motion?
Motion.
Motion, Councilmember Garrett. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Second, Councilmember Kennedy. This is for Sampson, Paxton, Sampson, Ginsburg, and Griffin. Further discussion, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? 108 carries 6-0. Resolution 109 is pulled. Resolution 110, resolution authorizing the retention of outside legal counsel for bankruptcy and bankruptcy-related matters. Council President Mantello at the request of the administration. Do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion.
Motion, Councilmember Kennedy. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second, Councilmember Gully. Discussion. All in favor? Opposed? 110 carries 6-0. Last resolution, Resolution 111, the Troy City Council requests the mayor implement and adopt a fire hydrant program. Council President Mantello, please take out at the request of the administration. Do I have a motion? Motion, Councilmember Garrett, do I have a second? Second, Councilmember Gully. Discussion, I'll discuss it during the special meeting unless council members have questions. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? 111 carries 6-0. I will take a motion to adjourn in a second. Motion, Councilmember Garrett, second, Councilmember December. We'll go right into the special if no one has a problem. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? 6-0, and we'll take a 3-minute, 4-minute break at times. Thank you.
Very fun. Very fun.
Hey, Joe. How's it going?
So, reserve your right to not right now. Follow-up question. What kind of soil?
I got it. Yep. All right. Thank you.
A lot on this.
I know.
A lot of money, I'm gonna be able to drain that
Do you mind moving?
Yeah,
this
like
for
off,
us?
you mind, you can't like off of the side doors.
We're gonna do this and like bring it.
3 minutes.
Yes, I was. I do. Oh, the irrigation of
Yeah, it'll be 4 months.